Hello viewers. In this video lecture we are going to see the topic Perceptron. This is the topic from the 5th unit Neural Networks from the subject Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning. Perceptron is machine learning algorithm for supervised learning of various binary classification tasks. It is also understood as an artificial neuron or neural network unit that helps to detect certain input data computations in business intelligence. This model is also treated as one of the best and simplest type of artificial neural network. However, it is supervised learning algorithm for binary classifiers. We consider it as a single layer neural network with 4 main parameters: input values, weights and bias, net sum and activation function. This is the diagram showing the components of Perceptron. Mr. Frank Roseblatt invented the Perceptron model as a binary classifier which contains 3 main components. Inputs are values, and input values will have the weights. A net input function, all the input value along with the weights will be processed with the input, applied to the input function, and this will be applied to the activation function. As a result of the activation function, output will be produced. Input node. It is the primary component of Perceptron which accepts the initial data into the system for further processing. Each input node contains a real numerical value. The input node accepts the initial data into the system for further processing. Each input node contains a real numerical value, weight and bias. Weight parameter represents the strength of the connection between the units. This is another most important parameter of Perceptron components. Weight is directly proportional to the strength of the associated input neuron in deciding the output. Further, bias can be considered as the line of intercept in linear equation. Activation function. These are the final சொல்லுங்க. ஒன் ஓ கிளாக் வரேன். சரி, இந்த எனக்கு ஒன்று செய்யுங்களேன். இன்றைக்கி உள்ள மார்க் டிஸ்ட்ரிபியூஷன் நேம் லிஸ்ட்லாம் போட்டு வச்சுருப்பீங்கல்ல, அதை எனக்கு அனுப்பி வைங்களேன். மெயிலில் இருக்கு. சரி விடுங்க, நானே அப்போ டைப் பண்ணிக்கிறேன். அட்டண்டன்ஸை பார்த்து அப்படியே டைப் பண்ணால் போதும்ல நேம் லிஸ்ட்டு. சரி ஓகே மேம், நான் பண்ணிக்கிறேன். ஓகே. ஆமாம் ஆமாம். சரி. Activation function. These are the final important components that help to determine whether the neuron will fire or not. Activation function can be considered primarily as a step function. Types of activation functions are there: sine function, step function and sigmoid function. So these graphs showing the different types of activation function. The data scientist uses the activation function to take a subjective decision based on various problem statements and forms the desired outputs. Activation function may differ in Perceptron models by checking whether the learning process is slow or has vanishing or exploding gradients. How does Perceptron work? Perceptron is considered as a single layer neural network that consists of 4 main parameters named input values, weights and bias, net sum and activation function. Begins with the multiplication of the working of Perceptron model begins with the multiplication of all the input value and their weights and add these values together to create the weighted sum. Then this weighted sum is applied to the activation function to obtain the desired output. The activation function is also known as step function and it is represented by F. So this is already we have seen this diagram. The each input value will be multiplied with their weights and all the answer will be sum up. In step 1, multiply all the input value with corresponding weight values and then add them to determine the weighted sum like this. x1 star, x1 is the first input, it will be multiplied with its weight value w1, x2 star w2 up to xn star wn. This everything will be added up together to form the weighted sum. Then this total will be added with the bias value b to improve the model performance. So we will so the process is summation of wi star xi. This is the weighted sum. This will be added with the bias value b. Then in step 2, this the previous value will be applied to the activation function, which give us output either in binary form or continuous value. So f of the previous value, f of summation of wi star xi plus b. This is the application of activation function finally produces our output y. Types of perceptron. There are two types, single layer perceptron and multi-layer perceptron. Single layer perceptron consists of only one layer in between the input and output. This algorithm do not contain recorded data, so it begins with inconstantly allocated input for weight parameters. Further, it sums up all the weight. The same process will be the same process that we have seen in the basic function will be performed in the single layer perceptron model. Multi-layer perceptron. In multi-layer perceptron model also has the same model structure but has a greater number of hidden layers. This is also known as backpropagation algorithm, which executes in two stages, forward stage, backward stage. In forward stage of multi-layer perceptron, activation functions start from the input layer in the forward stage and terminate on the output layer. In backward stage, weight and bias values are modified as per the model's requirement. In this stage, error between the actual output and demanded originated backward on the output layer and ended on the input layer. Activation function. Artificial neurons are elementary units in an artificial neural network. The artificial neurons receives one or more inputs and sums them to produce an output. Each input is separately weighted and the sum is passed through the function known as activation function. The function which takes the incoming signals as input and produces the output signal is known as activation function. So that's all about the topic. Thank you.